In the cold half-light of a northern dawn, bells tolled across the city of Marentia. Their echoes rolled over the rooftops like waves striking a cliff, slow, deliberate, and ominous. That morning marked the coronation of Valyria Maselina, a woman whose name, decades later, would be spoken in the same breath as curses. No one in the crowd could remember a monarch so young or so calm. She rode to a square in a chariot of black and silver, veiled in crimson gauze that hid her face yet caught the light like blood through glass. The people whispered as she never blinked that her eyes could turn a man's will to dust. Others said she carried a vial of ashes at her throat, the remains of the last counselor who betrayed her. Valyria's rise had been swifter than any chronicler could record. Born to a dying noble house, she was educated not in palaces, but in monasteries that smelled of ink and secrets. While other girls embroidered hymns, she studied the science of persuasion, the geometry of temples, and the language of symbols. Every kingdom, her tutor once wrote, is a mind. To rule it, you must learn where the nerves lie. When plague and war shattered Marentia's royal line, Valyria stepped from obscurity into command. She married the ailing Emperor Lucin III. Some say at his bedside, others in a chamber perfumed with myrrh, where the air shimmered from too many candles. Within a year, he was dead. Within two, every rival who questioned her claim was either exiled or missing. Yet the Empress's terror was not forged by sword or decree, but by the whisper that drifted through her marble halls. She did not sleep alone. The first stories were small. Servants hearing chanting from the western wing, a light glowing behind curtained windows long after midnight. Then came rumors of visitors entering the palace cloaked and masked, bearing offerings wrapped in velvet. A guard who tried to follow them vanished. His spear was later found standing upright in the courtyard fountain, as if placed there by invisible hands. Valyria dismissed the gossip with a smile. She built orphanages, restored the library, and ordered gardens planted where gallows had once stood. To the common people she was a savior. To the nobles, an enigma. She rules by silence, wrote one ambassador. When she speaks, the room listens as if afraid of what it might hear next. Behind her composure, however, something darker stirred. Those closest to her spoke of her fascination with the boundaries of the soul. She invited alchemists, astrologers, and surgeons to her court, men who argued that power over life and death could be learned as one learns music. Valyria funded their experiments, demanding reports written not in ink but in coded glyphs only she could read. The Empress often walked alone in the Hall of Ancestors, where statues of past rulers lined the walls. Servants swore they heard her murmuring to them, asking which of them still remembered the taste of dominion. "You rule by crown," she would whisper. "I rule by desire." Desire, for control, for understanding, for something no mortal should seek, became the axis of her reign. When famine struck the outer provinces, she sent grain caravans but also summoned the starving leaders to her capital, forcing them to dine with her in splendor. She watched their trembling hands reach for food, her expression unreadable. "A ruler must know hunger," she said softly, "and the fear of losing it." Soon, every decision she made carried ritual weight. Treaties were signed under eclipses. Decrees were read aloud only after the tolling of 13 bells. Even the guards were ordered to walk in measured rhythms that mimicked the heartbeat of the empire. Steady, controlled, impossible to resist. One chronicler, Brother Ansel, left a fragment of his diary that survived the later purges. Her court is not a flesh but a theater. The Empress moves as if every breath is choreographed. Those who serve her begin to dream in patterns, to speak her phrases without meaning to. I fear she is teaching us not loyalty, but surrender. What frightened Ansel most was what he called a mirror hour. At the stroke of midnight, Valyria locked herself in the western wing. Through a hidden slit in the door, he once glimpsed her seated before a circle of mirrors, each reflecting her from a different angle. Candles ringed her form, and within that trembling light she whispered her own reflections, as if instructing them. When he was discovered spying, his tongue was branded with the sigil of silence, and he was sent to a monastery at the edge of the empire. By her 10th year on the throne, the borders of Marentia were secure, yet the capital itself fell haunted. Streets emptied before dusk. Children were warned not to sing the Empress's name after dark, for fear the wind would carry it back. Strange fires were seen in the palace gardens, burning blue and cold. Then came the Festival of Concord. Valyria announced it as a celebration of unity between ruler and people. Thousands gathered in the plaza, expecting games and feasts. Instead, they watched as she unveiled a colossal statue of a woman crowned with serpents, its eyes set with obsidian. She called it the Guardian of Truth and declared that it would see all that is hidden. That night, lightning struck the statue's crown, shattering it, but the Empress laughed, saying the heavens had merely awakened her guardian. From that moment, her demeanor changed. She began to speak of voices guiding her from beyond the veil, of ancient laws that predated kings and gods. Her advisors noticed that she no longer consulted them before issuing decrees. Instead, she listened to the wind or to the silent figures painted on the chapel ceiling. The court split into factions, those who worship her as a living oracle, and those who plotted to end her rule before her visions consumed them all. But none dared move openly. Every attempt to oppose her ended in inexplicable disaster. Poisoned wells, sudden fires, ships sinking under clear skies. It was said that the Empress could foresee betrayal the way others sense rain. Still, in the quiet corners of taverns and monasteries, a question took root. What truly happened in the Western Wing? Travelers spoke of faint music drifting from the palace after midnight, notes too low for human instruments. Others claimed to have seen shadows moving behind the crimson curtains, shapes that did not match the bodies casting them. And sometimes, when the moon was full, a figure appeared at the highest balcony, arms raised as if commanding the stars themselves. By the time the chronicles reached neighboring realms, rumor had hardened into legend. To outsiders, Valyria Maselina was not merely an empress, but a sorceress, one who had bargained her soul for dominion. But those who had stood close enough to see her eyes said something else entirely. They said she was not mad nor divine, but utterly, frighteningly aware. Power, she once told her physician, is not in the crown or the throne. It is in knowing what people will do when they are afraid. And Marentia was very, very afraid. Fear, when it ripens, becomes conspiracy. By the 13th year of Valyria Maselina's rule, the nobles of Marentia no longer argued in public. They whispered in corridors and signed their names in candle smoke. The Empress's decrees had grown stranger. She ordered the minting of coins bearing no emperor's face, only a single eye. She commanded the construction of a palace annex made entirely of crystal and mirrors, so that, she said, truth can never hide. That annex would later be called the Glass Labyrinth. The project consumed the treasury. Craftsmen from distant realms were summoned to cut sheets of polished glass, so clear they seemed invisible. When joined by silver filigree, the walls reflected everything yet revealed nothing. Visitors emerged pale, unsteady, as if they wandered through their own thoughts and returned uncertain which were real. Inside this gleaming maze, Valyria began holding midnight councils attended by figures who left no record. No names, no heraldry, no footsteps in the morning dew. Courtiers swore that sometimes the reflections in those mirrors moved a heartbeat out of sync, smiling after she'd stopped. Opposition hardened when famine returned to the outer provinces. The people's patience thinned and governors, once fearful, became desperate. In secret, 7 of the realm's most powerful nobles met in the catacombs beneath the ruined chapel of St. Corvin to form what history would call the Council of 7. Their aim was simple: remove the Empress before she unmade the kingdom. Lord Careth Doran, captain of the Western armies, swore military support. Lady Myra Lane, High Treasurer, promised to divert gold for the deed. The scholar Ansel, yes, the same monk whom Valyria had once exiled and branded, was smuggled back into the capital to serve as their chronicler. His handwriting trembled as he recorded the plan. We move not against a woman, but against a storm-wearing human skin. Let the record show that fear, not greed, binds us. The council's first challenge was entry. The palace had grown unpredictable. Doors opened to walls, staircases ended in mirrors, and guards reported hearing their own voices giving orders they hadn't spoken. Many believed the building itself obeyed the Empress. Still, Lady Myra knew of a forgotten service tunnel once used by masons. It led to the foundations beneath the Glass Labyrinth. Through that passage they would send a small band confront Valyriia, while the city garrison, bribed by Doran, secured the gates. But plots have a way of whispering themselves into the wrong ears. Among the palace servants was a boy named Corin, tasked with sweeping the great hearths. One evening, while clearing the ashes in the Hall of Echoes, he overheard two council messengers exchanging tokens behind a tapestry. Terrified yet curious, he followed them through the servants' stair to a hidden door, then saw something no child should. A single candle burned on the floor. Around it stood three of the masked midnight visitors from the glass labyrinth. When they spoke, their voices were identical, one tone, one rhythm. The eye watches. The hand that moves against it shall turn upon itself. Then the candle went out. Corin fled. He tried to warn a guard, but the man only stared through him, repeating softly, "The eye watches." By dawn the boy was gone. The next night, a new mirror appeared in the corridor he used to clean, its surface faintly smudged by soot in the shape of a handprint. When the Council of Seven heard this rumor, dread gnawed their resolve. Doran insisted they act at once. "Every hour we delay," he said, "she learns another of our thoughts." And so the date was set, the last night of autumn, when the moon would be hidden. Rain lashed the city. Wind moaned through the statues like a chorus of ghosts. In the tunnels beneath the palace, torches sputtered as Doran led his soldiers through ankle-deep water. Their armor was blackened, their blades rapped to muffle sound. Above them, the palace clock struck 11. At the same moment, Valyria Maselina stood before the central mirror of her labyrinth. She wore no crown, only a simple veil that shimmered like oil on water. "They come," she said, though no one else was in the chamber. From the reflections around her, 7 figures emerged, blurred shapes echoing her movements, as if 7 versions of herself stood ready. "Let them see," she whispered. Down below, Doran's men reached the foundation arch. The wall opened easily, too easily, as though the mortar itself had softened to welcome them. A cold draft sighed through the tunnel, carrying the scent of myrrh and steel. When they stepped into the labyrinth, the torches dimmed. Light fractured endlessly. Faces multiplied. Every direction looked identical. Corridors of mirror glass stretching into infinity. "Mark your path," Doran ordered, carving his dagger across the wall. But each time he looked back, the scratch had vanished. Voices began to echo, soft at first, then growing. The soldiers heard their mothers, their wives, their own laughter. Fear unmoored them. One bolted forward and collided with his reflection. The glass rippled like water and swallowed him whole. Lady Myra, approaching through another entrance, clutched a silver key said to fit the Empress's private chamber. As she advanced, her reflection lagged a moment behind. When she blinked, the mirror version did not. It smiled and reached out the glass. The chronicles claim that by midnight, the labyrinth itself was alive, each mirror a window into some unseen place. Lord Doran reached the central chamber alone. There stood Valyriia, calm, waiting. "You think I did not see you?" she asked. "I built this maze from your ambitions." He raised his sword. "You built it from madness." Madness. Her reflection whispered the word first. Her mouth followed a second later. "No, Lord Doran, I built it from truth. Look." The mirrors flared, showing not Doran's face but those of every conspirator, caught in separate corridors, trapped between infinite selves. Myra struggling with her twin, Ansel writing frantic prayers, soldiers slashing at air. Valyriia turned to Doran. "Power is not taken. It is mirrored." Then the glass beneath his feet cracked. He fell into darkness deeper than sound. When dawn broke, the storm had cleared. The palace gates stood open. Citizens entered cautiously and found the halls empty. No guards, no courtiers, only silence. The glass labyrinth still glittered in the morning sun, but within its walls moved nothing save reflections. Days later, searchers discovered the Empress's veil draped over her throne. Beneath it lay the silver key of Lady Myra and Doran's broken sword, fused into a single spiral of metal. Of the conspirators, not one remained. In the months that followed, Marencia's council declared the throne vacant and appointed regency. Yet strange happenings persisted. At sunset, the labyrinth windows glowed faintly from within. Visitors claimed they saw silhouettes moving, sometimes one, sometimes seven. A merchant who touched the glass reported hearing a woman's voice whisper, "We are still watching." Brother Ansel's final record, written before he vanished, tries to make sense of it. Perhaps the Empress never sought immortality. Perhaps she sought reflection so perfect that she and the realm would become the same, an endless echo preserving itself. If so, she succeeded. Centuries later, the ruins of the glass labyrinth became a pilgrimage site. Scholars argued that Valyria Maselina was a visionary philosopher. Others called her a tyrant who drowned in her own illusions. The people simply left offerings of mirrors turned face down, lest her gaze awaken. Minstrels sang of the Lady of Mirrors, whose beauty blinded truth, whose voice could command one's own shadow to kneel. In some versions she was a warning, in others a goddess of perception. None agreed where her body lay. In the modern age, when excavations reached the labyrinth's foundations, workers found the crystal corridors intact. Yet every camera and measuring device failed inside. Reflections multiplied without cause. Voices recorded that no one had spoken. One archaeologist, before abandoning the site, wrote a single note. "She is still there, waiting for someone to look long enough." So ends the tale of Empress Valyria Maselina, the woman who tried to turn power into a reflection. Whether she was a sorceress, a scientist, or simply a ruler who understood fear too well, no historian can agree. But her story endures because it touches the oldest truth of all. The more we seek control over others, the more our own image consumes us. And if, on a quiet night, you find yourself before a mirror that seems to breathe with its own light, remember the legend. Step back. Do not blink, because some reflections, once they notice you, never let go.